The Great Hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with voices from across the galaxy. Representatives from 100 different worlds sat in their floating chairs discussing trade routes and mining rights. The air shimmered with translation devices that turned alien languages into something each species could understand. At the center of this massive chamber stood the Council of Elders, their ancient forms barely visible in the dim light. Elder Vorath stepped forward on his 6 legs, each movement slow and deliberate. His kind had lived for thousands of years, and he was among the oldest. The other council members quieted as his voice filled the chamber through the sound amplifiers. His words carried the weight of centuries, but what he said next would shock everyone present. "We have discovered a new species." He began, his voice crackling with age. "They call themselves humans, and they live on a world they name Earth." The council members leaned forward with interest. New species were always exciting, especially ones that might have valuable resources or could be easily conquered and added to their empire. But Vorath continued, and his next words made several representatives laugh out loud. "These humans are the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. We must avoid them at all costs. If we make contact with them, they will destroy us all just as they destroyed the Korthak Empire 3,000 years ago." The laughter grew louder. Counselor Zeph of the militaristic Draknari stood up, his scales glinting in the light. "Elder Vorath, with respect, your age has made you see threats where none exist. We have conquered 47 worlds in the last century. What could these primitive humans possibly do to us?" Vorath turned his ancient eyes toward the younger council members. "You do not remember the Korthak," he said quietly. "They were mighty warriors with technology far beyond what we have now. They had ships that could destroy entire star systems and weapons that could tear holes in space itself. They thought they were unstoppable too." The hall fell silent as Vorath continued his tale. The Korthak found Earth during one of their expansion campaigns. The humans had barely invented the wheel and lived in small tribes scattered across a world. The Korthak thought it would be easy to conquer them and take their planet for its resources. They sent down small forces expecting quick victory. But something unexpected happened. The humans did not surrender as other species had done. Instead, they fought back with a fury that surprised their attackers. When the Korthak destroyed one human village, 10 more would rise up to take revenge. When they killed human leaders, new ones would appear who were even more determined. The humans learned from every battle and adapted their tactics constantly. The Korthak tried everything. They used their advanced weapons and superior technology, but the humans found ways to turn these advantages against them. They captured Korthak soldiers and learned their weaknesses. They studied their enemies until they knew them better than the Korthak knew themselves. Most frightening of all, they never gave up no matter how hopeless their situation seemed. Council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Several of the younger representatives whispered to each other, clearly not believing the old tale. But Vorath was not finished with his warning. In the end, he said, the mighty Korthak Empire fell not to another advanced civilization, but to the primitive humans they thought they could easily defeat. The humans learned to use Korthak technology better than its creators. They turned the invaders' weapons against them and eventually hunted down every last Korthak ship in the galaxy. An entire species wiped out by creatures they considered barely more intelligent than animals. Meanwhile, on the small blue planet called Earth, something remarkable was happening. In a laboratory in Seoul, South Korea, a young scientist named Park Hwan was putting the finishing touches on humanity's first faster-than-light communication device. He had no idea that alien eyes were already watching his world, or that his next action would set in motion events that would change the entire galaxy. Park Hwan activated the device and sent out a simple message to the stars. The transmission was basic, just a mathematical sequence followed by images of Earth and its people. The message spoke of humanity's desire for peace and their hope to one day meet other intelligent life among the stars. It was a message full of curiosity and friendship, with no hint of the incredible potential that lay hidden within the human species. Back on Nexus Prime, Elder Vorath felt a chill run through his ancient body as the human transmission was detected by their monitoring stations. The other council members crowded around the displays, eager to see what these new creatures looked like. They saw images of humans working together, building great cities and reaching toward the stars with primitive, but determined efforts. "Look at them," Counselor Zeph laughed, pointing at the images. "They still use chemical rockets and metal tools. Our scouts report that their most advanced weapons could barely scratch our simplest shields." "Elder Vorath, you worry about nothing." But Vorath remembered things the younger council members had never learned. He remembered that the Korthak had said exactly the same things about humans 3,000 years ago. He remembered the reports of human determination that seemed impossible to break. Most of all, he remembered being one of the few survivors who escaped when the humans finally learned to build ships that could travel between the stars. The council voted that day to send an exploration fleet to Earth. They would observe these humans, study their weaknesses, and eventually add their world to the Galactic Empire. It would be easy, they decided, just another primitive species to conquer and exploit. The vote was unanimous except for Elder Vorath, who cast the only voice of dissent. As the session ended and the representatives began to leave, Vorath made one final desperate plea. "Do not underestimate them," he called out. "They may seem weak now, but humans have something we have lost. They have the ability to grow stronger when facing impossible odds. They unite when threatened, and they never stop learning from their enemies." His words fell on deaf ears. The council members were already making plans for the conquest of Earth, discussing how to divide its resources and how many humans to keep as slaves. They saw only primitive creatures ripe for exploitation, not the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. Elder Vorath returned to his private chambers that night knowing he had failed to prevent a disaster. He had lived through the fall of the Korthak Empire, and now he would have to watch it happen again. The humans were about to face their greatest test, and the galaxy would never be the same afterward. 6 months after the council meeting on Nexus Prime, a massive alien fleet appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system. Captain Zelak stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Destroyer of Worlds, and smiled with satisfaction. His fleet consisted of 50 warships, each one capable of turning entire continents into ash. The technology gap between his forces and the primitive humans was so vast that he expected the war to end before it even began. Zelak belonged to the Kaleth race, a species known throughout the galaxy for their military prowess and ruthless efficiency. They had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved countless species over the past 1,000 years. To them, humans were just another inferior race waiting to be brought under galactic control. On Earth, however, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Kim Sora sat at her radar station in a military base near Sol when her equipment detected something impossible. The readings showed massive objects approaching from deep space, objects far too large to be asteroids or comets. Her hands trembled as she reached for the emergency communication device. Within minutes of Kim Sora's alert, every major government on Earth was scrambling to respond. President Lee Jin-ho of the Korean Peninsula called an emergency meeting with world leaders, while scientists like Dr. Choi Min-ho worked frantically to understand what they were seeing. The objects were clearly artificial, and their size suggested technology far beyond anything humans had ever imagined. Admiral Park Yuna had been placed in command of Earth's hastily assembled Space Defense Force just 3 days earlier. Her fleet consisted of converted research vessels, mining ships, and the few military spacecraft that humanity had managed to build. Compared to the alien armada approaching Earth, her forces looked like toys facing real weapons. Captain Zelak sent his first communication to Earth expecting immediate surrender. His message was translated into all major human languages and broadcast across every network on the planet. The words were simple and direct. "We are the Galactic Council Fleet. Your world is now under our control. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist and we will make your species suffer for generations." The response came from Admiral Park Yuna herself, transmitted from the bridge of her flagship, Sol Hope. Her message was equally direct but carried a tone that surprised the alien captain. "We are the people of Earth. We do not surrender to anyone. If you come in peace, you are welcome to talk. If you come as conquerors, you will find us ready to defend our world." Zelak found the human response amusing. In his experience, primitive species either surrendered immediately when faced with superior force or broke into chaos and panic. The humans seemed to be doing neither. Instead, their governments were coordinating their response and their military forces were moving into defensive positions as if they actually believed they could fight back. To teach the humans a lesson about the futility of resistance, Zilak ordered a precision strike against a small military outpost in the Pacific Ocean. The attack would demonstrate alien firepower while causing minimal casualties, at least by galactic standards. A single energy beam from his flagship struck, the target vaporizing the entire installation and everyone in it within seconds. What happened next would forever change how the galaxy viewed humanity. Instead of the expected panic and surrender, the attack seemed to awaken something deep within, the human spirit. Within hours, every nation on Earth had put aside their ancient differences and united against the common threat. Factories across the world began converting to military production, while scientists shared their most closely guarded secrets in the common cause of survival. The unity that emerged was unprecedented in human history. Countries that had been enemies for decades suddenly became allies. Resources flowed freely between nations as humanity marshaled every bit of their technology and determination for the coming fight. Religious leaders called for divine protection while military commanders prepared for the greatest battle their species had ever faced. Major Kim Dae-ho was flying a routine patrol mission when the alien attack occurred. As news of the destroyed outpost reached his squadron, he made a decision that would inspire millions. Loading his fighter with every weapon it could carry, he flew straight toward the alien fleet. His radio transmission was heard by military forces around the world as he spoke his final words, "For Earth and for all who call it home." Kim Dae-ho's suicide attack struck one of the smaller alien vessels, causing significant damage before his fighter was destroyed. The sight of a single human pilot willingly sacrificing himself to strike back against impossible odds sent shockwaves through both the human population and the alien fleet. On Earth, millions of people volunteered for military service, while across the galaxy, monitoring stations recorded something they had never seen before: a primitive species that grew more determined after suffering casualties. Captain Zilak received reports of the attack with growing confusion. His tactical officers informed him that more human vessels were approaching from multiple directions, all broadcasting similar messages of defiance. The humans were not following any logical military doctrine. Instead, they seemed to be operating on pure determination and courage. The alien captain had expected to face a coordinated military force using standard defensive tactics. Instead, he found himself dealing with humans who turned civilian spacecraft into weapons, improvised explosives from industrial materials, and coordinated attacks using nothing more than determination and ingenuity. Their weapons were primitive, but their willingness to use them was unlike anything in his experience. As the first day of fighting ended, Captain Zilak realized he had made a serious error in judgment. The humans were not surrendering despite facing overwhelming odds. Instead, they were learning from each encounter, adapting their tactics, and somehow managing to inflict casualties on his technologically superior force. More troubling still, his own crew was beginning to show signs of doubt as they witnessed the incredible courage of their supposedly inferior enemies. The reports reaching Galactic Command described a situation that defied all military logic. A primitive species was not only refusing to surrender, but actually mounting effective resistance against the most advanced military force in known space. The humans were proving that there were some things more powerful than superior technology, determination, courage, and the absolute refusal to give up when fighting for their very survival. Elder Vorath received these reports in his chambers on Nexus Prime and felt no satisfaction at being proven right. He had hoped that somehow the Council would listen to his warnings and avoid this confrontation. Now the very thing he had feared most was beginning to happen. The humans were showing the galaxy something that had been forgotten over millennia of easy conquest, that the will to fight could overcome any technological advantage. 3 weeks after the first alien attack, every major city on Earth had been transformed into a fortress of human determination. In Seoul, engineer Hwang Minji worked 18-hour days in an underground facility that had once been a subway station. Around her, dozens of scientists and engineers labored over pieces of alien technology recovered from the damaged ships. What they discovered would change the course of the war. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but it followed predictable patterns. The creatures who built it had not faced serious opposition for thousands of years, and their designs reflected that complacency. Huang Minji found that the alien systems were efficient but inflexible, unable to adapt when faced with unexpected situations. Human technology was primitive by comparison, but it was designed by a species that had always faced challenges and obstacles. Working around the clock, Huang Minji's team began producing hybrid weapons that combined human innovation with alien technology. They took the energy cores from damaged alien ships and built new power systems that could be installed in human vessels. Most importantly, they learned that alien shields, while powerful, had vulnerabilities that could be exploited by someone willing to think outside traditional military tactics. General Sun Kyung had been placed in command of Earth's unified military response, and he was developing strategies that confused even his own officers. Traditional military doctrine called for defensive positions and organized formations, but Sun Kyung was planning something completely different. He had studied every piece of intelligence about alien behavior and realized that their greatest weakness was their predictability. The aliens expected humans to fight like other species they had conquered, using standard military formations and established battle plans. Instead, Sun Kyung organized his forces into small independent units that could strike quickly and disappear before the aliens could respond. He turned Earth cities into elaborate traps and prepared his forces for a type of warfare that no galactic species had ever used against an invasion force. Dr. Yang Hyuk made the discovery that would give humanity its first real hope of victory. While analyzing the power systems of a captured alien scout ship, he realized that their technology was actually thousands of years old. The alien species had conquered so many worlds so easily that they had stopped innovating. Their weapons and ships were powerful, but they represented ancient designs that had not been improved in millennia. Humans, by contrast, lived on a world where constant innovation was necessary for survival. Every generation had faced new challenges and developed new solutions. The human brain was wired for creative problem-solving, while the alien mind had become comfortable with using the same proven methods over and over again. This meant that humans could potentially outthink their technologically superior enemies. The first major human victory came when Commander Oh Sulki led a daring mission to capture an intact alien vessel. Her plan was considered suicide by military experts, but it succeeded because the aliens could not imagine that anyone would be desperate enough to attempt it. Using modified human ships disguised as debris, her team managed to board and capture an alien cruiser along with its crew. The information recovered from the captured ship revealed the alien fleet structure, supply lines, and communication methods. More importantly, it showed that the Galactic Council was not united in their support for the war. Several species were beginning to question whether attacking Earth had been wise, especially as casualty reports reached their homeworlds. The captured aliens were interrogated by Dr. Baek Jisoo, a linguist who had learned their language with remarkable speed. What she discovered was shocking. Many of the alien soldiers were not willing participants in the invasion. They had been conscripted from conquered worlds and were fighting only because they had no choice. This revelation would prove crucial in the battles to come. As the war entered its second month, something remarkable began happening to human forces. Every defeat taught them new lessons that they applied to future battles. Every piece of captured technology made their weapons more effective. Most importantly, every fallen soldier inspired 10 more humans to join the fight. The aliens found themselves facing an enemy that literally grew stronger with each encounter. Captain Zelak reported to Galactic Command that human tactics were becoming increasingly unpredictable and effective. They used everything from converted merchant ships to modified mining equipment as weapons. They coordinated attacks using primitive radio communications that somehow proved more reliable than advanced alien systems. Most troubling of all, they seemed to have no fear of death when fighting for their world. The psychological impact on alien forces was beginning to show. Species that had conquered dozens of worlds with ease found themselves struggling against opponents who should have been defeated in days. Morale began dropping as alien soldiers realized this war was unlike anything their race had experienced before. Some units began requesting reassignment while others started questioning their orders. In the underground command center beneath New York City, Admiral Park Yuna studied intelligence reports that showed the alien fleet was having supply problems. Their ships required exotic materials that could only be obtained from specific worlds in their empire. The long supply lines needed to support an extended campaign were becoming vulnerable to human hit-and-run attacks. The turning point came when human forces launched Operation Mongoose, a coordinated strike against alien supply convoys. Using captured alien technology and innovative human tactics, they managed to destroy 3 major supply ships and capture another intact. The success of this operation proved that humans could not only defend their world, but could also take the fight to their enemies. News of human victories began spreading beyond Earth through the galaxy's underground communication networks. Species that had been conquered by the Galactic Council centuries ago heard stories of a primitive world that was fighting back successfully. On dozens of worlds, resistance movements began forming as oppressed peoples realized that the Council forces were not invincible. Elder Vorath received these reports with mixed feelings. He was pleased that his warnings about human capabilities were being proven correct, but he feared what would happen next. The humans were not just surviving, they were inspiring others to resist galactic authority. If this continued, the entire structure of galactic civilization could collapse. The war was changing from a simple conquest to something far more dangerous for the established order. Humans had proven that determination and ingenuity could overcome superior technology. More importantly, they had shown other species that freedom was possible, even when facing impossible odds. The galaxy would never be the same. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike any in their recorded history. Representatives from 12 major species sat in grim silence as they reviewed casualty reports from the Earth campaign. What should have been a quick conquest had turned into a prolonged war that was draining resources from across the galaxy. Worse still, news of human resistance was inspiring rebellions on conquered worlds that had been peaceful for centuries. Admiral Thorak entered the council chamber with the bearing of a military commander who had never known defeat. His species, the Vorthak, were known throughout the galaxy as the ultimate warriors capable of crushing any resistance with overwhelming force. The council had summoned him as their final solution to the human problem. His orders were simple: destroy all human resistance and claim Earth as a warning to other potential rebels. The fleet that Admiral Thorak assembled was the largest in galactic history. Ships from a dozen different species joined together under his command, creating an armada that could destroy entire star systems if necessary. The combined firepower was so vast that even the council members who ordered the attack felt uneasy about what they had unleashed. On Earth, President Nam Yu-jin stood before the United Nations Emergency Assembly as reports of the approaching fleet reached the planet. The massive alien armada was still weeks away, but its size was beyond anything humanity had faced before. Every military expert agreed that conventional defense was impossible, yet the president refused to consider surrender. The decision to implement Operation Phoenix was made in a bunker deep beneath the Himalayan mountains, where the remnants of Earth's leadership had gathered for what might be their final meeting. Commander Jung-wook presented a plan so desperate that several military officers called it madness. The operation would involve using every captured alien ship and hybrid weapon in a coordinated strike against the approaching fleet, even though success would mean the certain death of every human pilot involved. As the alien armada entered Earth's solar system, something unexpected began happening within their ranks. The Zenthari warriors, who made up nearly a third of the fleet, were experiencing doubt about their mission. Their culture valued honor and courage above all else, and they had been impressed by human determination in previous battles. Many Zenthari officers privately questioned whether destroying such brave opponents was truly honorable. War Master Thane, the leader of the Zenthari forces, found himself in an impossible position. His orders were clear, but his warrior instincts told him that the humans had earned respect rather than destruction. In secret meetings with his most trusted officers, he began discussing something that would have been unthinkable just months before: the possibility that they were fighting on the wrong side of this war. The fractures in the alien alliance became apparent when several Zenthari ships began transmitting tactical information to human forces. The transmissions were disguised as routine communications, but they provided Earth defenders with crucial intelligence about alien fleet movements and weaknesses. This information allowed human commanders to plan strikes that seemed impossible. Given their inferior numbers, Dr. Bekjisu made a discovery that would change everything while questioning captured alien prisoners. Many of the species fighting for the Galactic Council were themselves conquered peoples forced to serve their former enemies. The Drakmari had been enslaved 500 years ago, and their warriors were fighting only because their families were held hostage. The Kelthian pilots were refugees from a destroyed world who had been given a choice between military service and death. This revelation led to secret communications between human leaders and oppressed alien groups throughout the attacking fleet. Messages were sent using captured alien technology, promising freedom to any species willing to turn against their Galactic Council masters. The response was immediate, as dozens of alien commanders made contact expressing their desire to join the human cause. The first open defection occurred when 3 Drakmari battlecruisers suddenly turned their weapons on other council ships during what should have been a routine formation flight. The Drakmari commander broadcast a message throughout the fleet, declaring his people's allegiance to Earth and their determination to fight for freedom rather than serve their oppressors. Elder Vorath watched these events unfold from his private chambers with a mixture of fear and fascination. The humans were accomplishing something that had seemed impossible. They were turning the Galactic Council's own forces against each other. More importantly, they were inspiring conquered species to remember what freedom meant and to fight for it, regardless of the cost. Admiral Thorak found his carefully planned invasion turning into chaos as more ships defected to the human side. Species that had served the Council for centuries were suddenly remembering their own histories of conquest and oppression. The humans had somehow awakened a spirit of rebellion that was spreading through his fleet like a disease. The situation became critical when the peaceful Melodian species openly declared their support for humanity. The Melodians controlled much of the galaxy's medical technology, and their defection meant that alien forces would lose access to advanced healing systems. More significantly, their moral authority influenced dozens of other species who began questioning their participation in the war. Commander Lee Seojin found herself in command of a fleet unlike anything seen in galactic history. Human ships flew, alongside vessels from 6 different alien species, all united in their determination to resist Council tyranny. The combined force was still outnumbered by Admiral Thorak's fleet, but their coordination and determination made them far more effective than their numbers suggested. The war reached a turning point when news of the human rebellion reached conquered worlds throughout the galaxy. Oppressed populations who had accepted Council rule for generations suddenly began organizing resistance movements. Governors reported riots and sabotage on planets that had been peaceful for centuries, as the human example inspired others to fight for their freedom. The Galactic Council faced their worst nightmare, a galaxy-wide rebellion led by the very species they had tried to quickly conquer. The humans had not only survived the initial attack, but had turned it into a catalyst for revolution. Elder Vorath's warnings were finally being proven correct, but it was far too late to prevent the catastrophe he had foreseen. Admiral Thorak made the desperate decision to deploy the Council's ultimate weapon, planet-killing devices that could destroy entire worlds. His plan was to make an example of Earth that would terrify other rebels into submission. However, he failed to account for human ingenuity and their alien allies, who were already working on a counter-strategy. Dr. Kim Hansel led a combined team of human and alien scientists in developing a defense against the planet killers. Working with technology from 6 different species, they created a plan that was as audacious as it was dangerous. If they succeeded, they could turn the Council's ultimate weapons against their own fleet. If they failed, Earth and billions of other lives would be lost. The stage was set for a final confrontation that would determine the fate of galactic civilization. The old order, built on conquest and oppression, was crumbling while something new was being born from the ashes. The humans had proven that even the smallest and seemingly weakest species could change the universe if they refused to surrender their principles. The galaxy had never witnessed anything like the rebellion that erupted across dozens of star systems, as news of the human Earth resistance spread through underground networks. On the industrial world of Kepler-7, the enslaved Drakmari workers rose up against their council overseers using improvised weapons and captured equipment. On the mining colonies of the Vega system, 3 different oppressed species coordinated simultaneous uprisings that caught their rulers completely off guard. Commander Li Xiujin stood on the bridge of the newly christened Freedom of Earth as she surveyed the most unusual fleet in galactic history. Human vessels flew in formation with Xanthari warships, Melodian medical frigates, and captured council cruisers operated by liberated crews. The sight would have been impossible just months ago, but the war had changed everything about how the galaxy viewed cooperation and alliance. The first major victory for the human allied fleet came at the Battle of Proxima Station, where a council supply depot was defended by what should have been an overwhelming force. Li Xiujin used tactics that combined human unpredictability with alien technology and warrior traditions. Xanthari fighters provided heavy assault while human pilots used suicide runs to break through enemy formations, and Melodian ships provided support that kept casualties surprisingly low. The battle demonstrated something that terrified council leadership across the galaxy. The combined human-alien force was not just effective, it was inspiring other neutral species to join their cause. Within days of the Proxima victory, 5 more species declared independence from council rule and offered their support to the growing rebellion. Warmaster Thane had fully committed his Xanthari warriors to the human cause, and their impact was immediate and devastating. The Xanthari brought not only military might, but also a code of honor that influenced other alien species within the Allied fleet. Their presence legitimized the rebellion in the eyes of many neutral species who respected Xanthari military traditions. On Earth itself, the news of alien allies joining their cause created a surge of hope that energized the entire human population. President Nam Yujin addressed the world explaining that humanity was no longer fighting alone against impossible odds. Instead, they had become the center of a galactic movement for freedom that included dozens of different species united by common cause. The underground resistance networks that had formed on conquered worlds became increasingly bold as they received weapons and supplies from the human allied fleet. On the ocean world of Aquatica, the amphibious natives who had been enslaved for 3 centuries successfully sabotaged the council naval facilities. On the desert planet of Sunhold, nomadic tribes that had never worked together began coordinating attacks against council mining operations. Dr. Bayek Jisoo continued her work with alien refugees and defectors, learning more about the true extent of council oppression throughout the galaxy. Her interviews revealed that the council had conquered over 200 worlds in the past millennium, enslaving entire species and destroying any culture that resisted their authority. The humans had unknowingly become the spark that ignited resentment that had been building for centuries. Admiral Thorak found his carefully organized invasion fleet fragmenting as more units defected or simply refused to follow orders. The Kelthian pilots who flew many of his scout ships had begun feeding intelligence to human forces. Several Vorthak commanders had been arrested for openly questioning the morality of destroying Earth. Most troubling of all, some of his own officers were beginning to express doubt about their mission. The Council on Nexus Prime convened emergency sessions as reports of rebellions reached them from across their empire. Worlds that had been peaceful for generations were suddenly in open revolt. Trade routes that had operated safely for centuries were being attacked by liberation forces. The entire structure of galactic civilization was collapsing faster than anyone had thought possible. Elder Vorath received an unexpected visitor in his chambers when a human delegation arrived on Nexus Prime under a flag of truce. Admiral Park, Sunho led the group along with representatives from 6 allied species. They had come to offer the Elder a chance to join their cause and help build a new galactic order based on freedom rather than conquest. The meeting between Vorath and the human leaders was historic. For the first time in galactic history, a member of the ruling council was openly discussing the overthrow of the system he had served for millennia. Vorath shared detailed information about council weaknesses, including the locations of their most important military facilities and the identities of governors who might be willing to negotiate peaceful transitions. The information provided by Elder Vorath enabled the human allied fleet to launch Operation Liberation, a coordinated strike, against 12 major council strongholds simultaneously. The attack succeeded beyond all expectations, as local resistance movements provided crucial intelligence and support. Within a single week, the Council lost control of nearly a quarter of their territory. The psychological impact of these victories spread throughout the galaxy as species that had never dreamed of freedom began organizing their own liberation movements. The Council found themselves fighting dozens of separate rebellions while their military forces were increasingly unreliable. Many units simply refused to fire on rebels, while others actively joined the growing alliance against Council authority. Commander Chamin Seo led one of the most daring operations of the war when she coordinated the liberation of the slave world, Torvak Prime. The planet held over 50 million beings from dozens of different species, all working in massive industrial complexes under brutal conditions. The liberation required precise timing and cooperation between human forces, Zenthari warriors, and local resistance fighters. The success at Torvak Prime provided the human allied fleet with millions of new recruits and supporters. More importantly, it demonstrated that the Alliance could successfully free entire worlds and establish new governments based on democratic principles. News footage of liberated slaves embracing their rescuers was broadcast across the galaxy, inspiring even more species to join the rebellion. The Council made the desperate decision to recall all their forces to defend their core worlds, abandoning their outer territories to the growing rebellion. This strategic retreat was intended to consolidate their remaining strength, but instead it created a power vacuum that was quickly filled by local liberation movements and human allied forces. Admiral Thorak received orders to fall back to Nexus Prime, but found that nearly half his fleet refused to comply. The Zenthari had openly joined the rebellion while several other species had declared neutrality. Even his own Vorthak warriors were questioning whether they should continue fighting for a cause that seemed increasingly hopeless. The tide of war had completely turned as the human allied fleet went from defending Earth to liberating oppressed worlds throughout the galaxy. Human tactics of refusing to surrender combined with alien technology and warrior traditions had created a force that the Council could not match. More importantly, the human example of freedom and determination had awakened something in the galactic population that could never be put back to sleep. The stage was set for a final confrontation at Earth itself, where the Council would make their last stand using weapons capable of destroying entire worlds. But they would face an enemy unlike anything in galactic history, a united force of free peoples determined to build a better future for all species. The humans had kept their promise to never surrender, and in doing so they had changed the galaxy forever. The final battle for Earth began when Admiral Thorak's remaining fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system. His force was still impressive, despite the defections including massive dreadnoughts capable of cracking planets and planet-killer weapons that could destroy entire worlds. But he no longer faced the primitive human defense force that had started this war. Instead, he confronted a united galactic alliance that had grown stronger with every battle. Commander Chamin Seo coordinated the defense from her flagship New Sol, while allied vessels from 37 different species took their positions throughout the solar system. The diversity of the fleet was staggering. Zenthari battlecruisers flew alongside human destroyers while Melodian hospital ships prepared to treat casualties from dozens of different alien physiologies. Each species contributed their unique strengths to create a defensive force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Thorak activated his planet-killing weapons targeting Earth with enough destructive power to completely eliminate the human homeworld. His message was broadcast to the entire galaxy, declaring that this would be the fate of any world that dared to resist Council authority. The massive weapons began charging their energy systems, while Council propaganda broadcasters prepared to record Earth's destruction as a warning to other rebels. Dr. Kim Hansel and her multi-species scientific team had been preparing for this moment for weeks. Working in underground laboratories protected by the most advanced shields available, they had developed a plan that was audacious even by human standards. Instead of trying to stop the planet killers, they intended to redirect their immense energy output back at the Council fleet itself. The human allied forces had spent months preparing Earth for this final battle. Every major city had been evacuated to underground shelters, while the planet's surface bristled with defensive weapons built from human ingenuity and alien technology. Most importantly, A network of energy redirection stations had been constructed, in secret, using plans that combined human engineering with technology from 6 different allied species. As the planet-killer weapons reached full charge, Thorak gave the order to fire. The combined energy output was enough to destroy dozens of worlds simultaneously as beams of pure destruction lanced across space toward Earth. For a moment it seemed that the human homeworld would